So, to, to begin our group project, we'll be going over a couple modules each. We'll both be weighing in on some of them. Um, Alexis Warren and Patrick Smith. So, I'll start with Module 3. So, Module 3 was just about critical thinking. And going over this module was like the opening, the beginning of us taking the class. That was our first, you know, our introduction to opening our minds up to start thinking differently and seeing things differently, understanding things differently, and going about conversations and, and logic and all of that completely different now. To me, critical thinking is just that, analyzing what you're talking about, um, looking for the things that you should be looking for to convince whoever you're talking to or your audience in general of what it is that you're talking about. So the first thing that I always enjoy about this module was the floating versus flowing, that piece, and how I view the differences between them, and how I view people that are each one. So the flower versus the floater. If I characterize a floater, to be frank, it's pretty much just like a really lazy person, someone who probably doesn't take accountability for their actions or the things that happen to them in life. They're very passive and very nonchalant. I would probably say that if I encounter a floater, I'm probably not going to deal with them. They're not aggressive. They're not anyone who's not in control of their life. I probably just can't deal with them at all because, as the module spoke about, a floater would be someone who they just float through life passively and let other people and external forces push them around. So to me, that just says you're pretty much okay with whatever happens to you. You're not gonna take the initiative to change your circumstances. And those are the kinds of people that start to that are the reason why we have, I think, economic issues. That's the reason why when people actually need things, they can't get it because these floaters are taking advantage of the system. They're taking advantage of other people. They're they are the useless bodies that inhabit this world. You cannot move through life that way because this is not a pretty world. Like if this was a euphoria, that would be great. You wouldn't have to worry about that. But I said euphoria. That's not what I meant.
You said something about that with bars like floating, and that to me means like say letting somebody else take control of their lives, and that like we were talking about, just somebody just latching on and just not thinking for themselves,
Right.
you know. And to me, that's what that meant to me. That, that was a good point though, and that's a lot. You see that a lot.
A lot, especially in the military.
Yeah.
It's someone else is trying to mess me over, or somebody else did this. It's their fault. It's always someone else to own this. This is just my interpretation of a floater, though. That a floater is just somebody who's just gonna be like, hey, that's not my fault. It's his fault. He did it. Oh, I stubbed my toe. Oh, it was his fault. Oh, I got fired from my job. Nah, it's because he didn't like me or whatever. No, you can't move through life that way. So a floater is someone who pretty much is just gonna allow whatever happens to them to happen, and they won't take any sort of initiative. They get hooked on drugs. It's just because somebody made them do it or something like that. Instead of because everyone goes through things in life. Everyone has obstacles. Everyone has things that are less than desirable. And if you are so hell bent on just allowing it to happen, I can't imagine anyone that is successful or powerful or anyone who's really doing well in their life being a floater, because you cannot succeed in this world by just allowing whatever to happen to you. Now, a flower, as said in the text, um, flowing with the difficulties of life while taking some chances and using reason to find the best path. Um, that is probably the only way that you really can take life. It's not. I feel like it's more that kind of person is a little bit more serious, even though they do understand, hey, I can't control everything, and they can accept that, but they're still going to work to do what they need to do, so that they don't continue to be in bad positions. They don't continue to struggle or whatever the case may be. I think anyone floating through life, they really need to reevaluate themselves, reevaluate what's going on with them, and do what they need to do, whether that be mentally, really physically, whatever. They need to get it together and pursue, which I think is the ultimate goal, pursue happiness. I mean, I don't feel like you can be happy by way of anyone else. You cannot reach that happiness unless you go after it. And a floater is not going to go after that happiness. Whatever happiness is defined by everyone else, whatever your happiness is, that's fine. Unless that person's happiness is to ride on somebody else's coattail, I mean, hey. But I don't imagine that being a thing. Another piece, basing our lives on science. I know I answered it a little bit differently in the module, but I don't really feel that way. I just needed to fill up the lines. But I would say that I cannot base my life on science, because I am religious. Basing my life on science means that I'm literally here by way of, a bunch of molecules coming together to form this human being. And I know that's not the case because of my religion. And I think a lot of people that are religious probably feel the same way. Science says that these are the reasons why a human being can bring life to another. And I've seen someone give birth before, and there's pretty much no one who can tell me anything differently, just because of my religion. You cannot tell me science can prove that someone just like me can exit someone's body and grow up to be someone big like Patrick, and that's scientific. You can't, because science can't prove anything. Science can't prove everything, but religion can. That's neither here nor there. Go right ahead.
Well, I think with that, I think it goes hand in hand if you believe, if you have a religion or anything spiritual. You know what I'm saying? I mean, because me in particular, I don't categorize myself as being in someone's religion, because I have been through enough churches in my time, and looked at many churches and seen things and read and researched things myself to understand. Plus, I question a lot of things.
I'm going to have to combat you with that, though.
I understand.
That is a worldly mind. You got to get out of your worldly mind, because the world would never be able to make sense of. For what I say, the world cannot make sense of God's wonders. That we cannot make sense of it, because this is a worldly mind. This is all we know. We cannot make sense of that. Continue, though. That's fine.
Like I said,
His people.
Right?
His people.
So, you can go on and on about this. This could be a whole thing, but I'm just telling you, just giving a base of what I believe in. I do believe there's a high power, to bless these people to do the things they do
Right.
and to believe them. So, that's why even I used to fight with a lot of religious people on the point. They would always tell me how to do your research, read, and that's what I did. And that's why, when I hear some things, I feel like with religion, I think it's a little bit control. And you know what I'm saying? Because
You said it's
people,
control?
like people, like when you go to a preacher, when you go to church, that's why I feel like you read the Bible, you interpret it how you do.
Yeah.
I can't go to church and interpret how he does.
But
Because I'm different.
as far as that though, that's not just the
He's giving his
pastor.
basics.
It's okay, yeah, that's his interpretation, but it's also what God has put on him for him to tell.
But then how come it's not the same for me when I read the Bible?
Hey, that's when you would speak to your higher purpose and ask for him to tell you what he wants you to take from it. That's neither here nor there though. Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get back. So aside from that, the difference between fact and opinion. So I know most people in most conversations they take kind of just like this conversation that we just had. I'm speaking what I believe to be fact because it's common knowledge for people in my religion. But if some would say that's merely opinion. So the difference between the two is I think that's really open to interpretation. It's a
Think about critical.
right. That's where I was going
Come
too.
on,
Critical thinking has to just you have to stay open because what is fact to me is not fact.
And you hear different things. You hear something different than you used to hearing.
Right.
That may help you. Like, hold up, this is the way I thought. And when you exchange it with somebody else, that's when you'll get a better understanding. And I bet you $1. Bet you
$1.
Meet you, get a median. You'll find a common ground. And you'll agree. Now, there's cases where you'll agree to disagree.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to say not. I'm gonna have to say not. I've had an experience on my boat. When I was on the boat, I sat and we stand 5-hour watches, and I had 2 5-hour watches with it was a man on my boat who was a Wiccan, a male witch, yeah. And we sat and we spoke about religion, and that ended in we're gonna have to agree to disagree. I'm absolutely open to hearing your side and how you feel about it, but I know I'm not gonna change your mind from what I'm saying, and you're definitely not changing my mind. So.
But here's my thing. I know you probably respect it,
right.
Or do you?
I respect everyone's opinion.
No, do you respect his belief?
What does that mean?
His belief of being a Wiccan.
I don't believe in it. But to each his own.
Yeah, exactly. See, and the way I interpret that as if you say you don't believe in it, it doesn't exist to you. So,
it doesn't.
So, what's there to respect?
Touche.
Yeah. That's to me. I would have understood where he came from too, because what he believes in helps him get to where
How
he is.
can you understand where someone is coming from when they're talking about something without knowing what led them to that? I don't know what led him to being a Wiccan.
Yeah.
Was it watching Hocus Pocus on Disney Channel? You wanted to be a Wiccan after that?
I would
I don't
actually
know.
try to find out. I'm like, what made you think go there? You know?
Maybe.
And that's just the way I think about it. Because I've always been like that since a youngin'. And
right.
I used to, like with my aunts, I used to question them. Like, they were Jehovah's Witnesses. And I would question them to death. And, because we'd be reading, and I just look up. What? And I'm like, and I see pictures, and I shouldn't go by that. And that's one thing I'm really working on. That's one thing I love about this class, making me work on.
Right.
Is when I looked at those, I would just think about the colors of people and what you wanted to believe in. Who's this person right here, right? We go by a vision, too, right? In our beliefs. Mm-hmm. That plays a hand in it. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, pictures of Jesus is white. And I'm a geographical person. I just do my research, and I'm like, okay,
he couldn't have been white.
Ever. And not in that country. I mean,
no,
look at
not in that region.
Just look at the
Not in that
map.
region, not at that time.
Oh, look at the
Maybe
map.
now,
Yeah, because people
because
took
we're all
over.
over the place.
People
Not
took
then.
over,
He couldn't
wars.
have been right.
You know,
No.
we could go on and on. That's my type
Definitely.
of party right there. You know, we could go on and on about that, but that actually helps me actually, you know, get more into,
Right.
especially being in class, making me understand.
That's where I was gonna go
So I
too
love
with that.
this very thing.
This class, had I taken this before I had a conversation with him, I definitely would have went further to try to figure out where his idea of all of this came from. Because really, I couldn't understand anything he was saying because I didn't have his background. It may have been it was just assumptions because I didn't know what he was talking about. Yeah, that ties into uh, module 7, but I had no idea. I literally I was assuming. So had I had this foundation prior to going into that conversation with him, I think the conversation would have been different, and maybe I could have respected his belief more, if at all. Um, but yeah, that was my overview of module 3.
Explain it. Question on module 3 I asked her is why are arguments important in her personal life? Why is that important to you?
It does kind of tie into what I was saying, but I do think um, in my personal life, arguments are necessary to, further learn someone, get to know them, see their thought process as well as so that they can see where I'm coming from, they can understand me. There's no way to completely understand another human being, but by having arguments, you kind of, piecing that million piece puzzle together, little by little. So I think the only way that you can really understand someone or kind of see where they're coming from or anything like that is by their arguments.
Right. Doing a module 4, and one of the things we all have to focus on when we're anytime we're in a conversation or reading something that's trying to sway our opinion about something. Like say you're reading an opinionistic, or you listen to opinion radio, I'm a radio guy, so I listen to talk radio. And
Breakfast Club?
no, actually, I listen to, I'm a sports radio guy, and they touch you understand. I listen to a particular person, Bomani Jones, sports guy, but he digs really into politics and everything like that. And one thing he does is focus on the issue. And that's in any argument, any conversation, especially arguments, actually. That ties into arguments. When you argue, one thing is to focus on the issue. And the example that I have personally and critically, it involves an argument about uh, focusing on the issue. A good example is actually the Colin Kaepernick situation. Because, granted, there is one point where people are saying, you're at work. You shouldn't bring your outside business into work. However, he said, and you gotta understand the position where he's at. He's on the big stage, he's on cameras. So, for me to make a point, I'm gonna kneel to the national anthem. Or I'm actually gonna sit down. That's exactly what we did the first time. I'm just gonna sit. And when you think about it, first thing that comes to mind first with people is, oh, you're disrespecting the flag. You didn't even ask the man, why are you sitting down? You start assuming. Everybody assumed what he was doing before he answered the question, why are you sitting during the national anthem? Granted, we don't know how many people sit in the stands, but we're not going to get into that. And because this is why I feel like everybody's not focused on his issue was I'm making a stand. I'm I'm raising a flag up. I'm wearing a flag on what's going on in the United States. And, people didn't want to hear that. Hey, I don't want you to bring these personal problems into sports. I don't want to hear that. Well, this is where the media has a lot of power. And, you had no choice but to focus on that. And people make it a big deal. And to me, that's his business. And then, but if you want to focus on the issue of why he's doing it, let's talk about it. But nobody wants to talk about the issue. Nobody, they go above that. Well, it's
the only issue is that he is disrespecting the flag.
Yeah.
Advice why he is disrespecting the flag.
And you want to call it disrespect, but people don't bring up the fact that he talked to a lot of military people, and they say, you know what? They gave him the idea of kneeling for the flag. They gave him the idea of that. So, and he said it himself. I respect everybody who died for our country. He said that. He said everything, but they don't want to hear that. They always focus on the negative. Don't bring it into my sports. That's where I get really angry with people. You're not focusing on the issue. If you want to talk about it, focus on the issue. And that's why when I talk about it on Facebook or with a friend, I always ask him, what's your issue with him kneeling? He already told you why he's doing it. So what's your problem with it? The big answer I get, well, I don't want to see that. And while I'm watching sports, I say, well, stop watching ESPN and just watch football. Because if you're going to follow ESPN, that's what they are. They're news, sports news. They're going to hit everything. They're just like CNN. So that's why we're focusing on the issue is one thing. And I wanted to talk about something, too, about critical thinking, too, on her. I had an incident. I wanted to bring it up because it just came to my attention. Uh, I was working, and this is where this class really made me open my eyes. And I actually had a call into this class. It was a call because I filled out an application to get a promotion in my job, and I did the interview, and they're still considering me. I've been there for a while, and anyway, um, we had an issue. I worked late, and I had to turn the truck in. Park the truck at a shop, and instead of me, I pulled the truck in. I said the gate was locked. I didn't know which parking lot we could go because I was new there. Well, I've been there about 6, 7 months. And he told me to park in parking lot A. And he told me, I didn't know. Instinct told me, what's parking lot A? Do you know? But I assumed. So I just pulled it in where I thought parking lot A was. And next morning, I'm getting a call like 5 in the morning, getting scolded because they said, you left the truck out. They told you to park across the street. I said, nobody told me to park across the street. First thing the guy asked me, he said, did you ask him where this is? And I said, no. I assumed. I didn't know. And they were like, if you really want to be a manager, you got to really think through. That was part of critical thinking that you don't have. He told me that, and I was like, holy crap. And that right there just made me look at things different. And then when I signed up for school, this first thing came up, critical thinking. First, I jumped on it. And now, the advantages that I have now when I go back to work are going to show. And but that's just something I just wanted to share as well. But focusing on the issue, in just in life, with any arguments you have with your spouse or anybody, just you have to focus on the issue. And when you do that, it kind of can make things worse. Like especially in relationships, it can make things worse, which actually you learn from it too. It should help the other people for us person learn as well if they come in open minded, of course. Because now I know I will come open. I'm already an open minded person, but I'm even more, open minded about other things that I was closed minded on. So another point I want to hit on, it was primary question 5, and this asks, what are reasons and evidence in an argument, and why are they important? Well, let's just talk about earlier about religion and science, living by science. You know, scientists might ask a question like, will tell you, when they're making a point, like say, like for instance, man began from an ape type, what do you call them? Homo sapien before Homo erectus, or whatever it is. And they always prove it. They always have the books, but they give you the proof of their stuff. And like my question would have been to you, like how can scientists not prove that man didn't come from monkeys and stuff like that? How can they not prove it? And
I'm not saying that they can't prove that, but they can't prove everything.
Right.
Just like science cannot find cures for certain things. They don't have a cure for cancer. There's no cure for HIV. There's no cure for herpes. There's no cure for what's it called?
I get what you're doing.
Yeah.
So,
like all these things that many people are impacted by, they don't have cures for that. But my religion, once God sees fit, He can do that Himself. But it's a journey. Science can't do anything about that.
What I was trying to say though, like maybe scientists can prove some things that happen. Like one thing I've always questioned was dinosaurs. I'm like, how can dinosaurs live on this earth? And you come up with bones and you find this and that. They said they dug these up. I mean, I just never could believe something like that happened.
That dinosaurs existed, even with the evidence.
I think they're manufactured.
That's fabricated evidence. So
you
don't go to museums.
It's like people think I'm a conspiracy theorist, believer, and I just I say take it how you want to. I just don't believe that. I just don't believe that especially with religion, and especially because it does play a background in what you do, and when you argue in that, you could tell like religion, like what, man has always been on earth from the beginning. That's what they've always said from the beginning. Animals, then men. The man and woman. Start the whole thing, correct? That's what we were taught. So where we get this thing, like what you call it, the dark ages, before this happened, and this next, boom, have a big flooding. But in the back of religion, it tells you, what I learned was maybe this religion teaches us that Moses came. There was a big flood when Moses came. He got all the animals and put them on the ark. Put everybody on the ark, 2 of each, boom. And then the world happened again.
So I have a question though about what you were talking about, not believing that dinosaurs exist. And I'm not saying I do or don't believe that. I'm just going off of what you just said. So in module 4, it says here, reasons are beliefs, evidence, metaphors, analogies, and other statements offered to support or justify conclusions. Do you believe like that is the definition of reasons?
Yeah.
Okay. Does evidence support?
Yeah.
It does support and it does justify a conclusion.
Right.
So
let's see.
You're saying that that these archaeologists are finding these large bones and they're creating. This is just pure imagination, is what you're saying.
Did they state where?
If you research, you can probably
find
where.
Yeah. And then I'll have to find, where'd you find this? How did you find this? What made you go
especially
over there?
In this day and age.
There for that?
Yeah, but especially in this day, just like people with their little gold meters or jewelry
Yeah,
meters.
you
They
find
go
stuff.
across the
Yeah,
exactly.
you find stuff underneath there. You know what's buried,
Exactly.
and you know
So
you might find money hidden. You know, stuff happens. You know.
so you
I
still
just
don't
but
find that
that
to
you
be
mean to tell me
a
you find that huge?
justifiable
You mean to
conclusion.
tell me you find that big bone this big? Oh,
What
get out of here, son.
what evidence supports your theory
I
then?
mean I'm questioning their what they're doing. That's what I'm doing. If I'm reading something like that, when I read that in school, I questioned that. Where are you getting this from? You know what I'm saying? They didn't say there were dinosaur bones found in this country in this year by this
In most museums
archaeologist,
that they have,
and you know,
they have little plaques that state on that though.
yeah, and that's probably what I need to see and research further. You know, but in school we were just taught basic. It was pretty ambiguous what they were given. You know, oh, they just found it here. They didn't give you. They just told, oh, they found dinosaur bones. Where? You know, that's. I'm sorry, I'm not passionate about that.
That's okay.
That's just me. That's just my critical thing. I get real passionate. It just made me more passionate about
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and ask you your question for Module 4 then. So, and I guess this definitely does kind of tie in with that too. So, when would you personally use the sponge approach to studying, and when would you use the penny for gold approach? Are you going to take the sponge approach when you're researching
yes, that's one thing I really did, and I commend myself for that because that's when I read that I was like, you know what, I do that because I
You
do
use
like
the
I
sponge
try to
approach.
take in everything you're talking about, everything you tell me,
Valid or not?
valid or not, I just take it all in because I'm gonna find out. I'm gonna either believe what you say because it makes sense to me, and then but I'm gonna research.
That sounds more
Too.
like the penny for gold though. So, do
Yeah,
you
you
use
have
the
to
sponge
research
approach?
everything. You have to. That's why I believe you research everything.
So, you only
You
use
can
the
tell
penny
me.
for
You can
gold
tell me
approach
anything.
then.
If I feel like I do both because if you tell me, okay, Patrick, like in school, they teach you about say like 9/11
Mm-hmm.
when they tell you, oh, these terrorists did this, that, and this, you know. And I take everything you said on the news. You knew who the people were, blah 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 blah.
You just suck all of that in.
You suck all that in, and people believe it or they don't. Now, the people who don't believe it, that's when you're questioning. How do you know these people? How do you know these people? They're supposed to be dead anyway. You say you found no body on the plane. You found, I mean, whatever. Anyway, but my thing was something right. You know, something not right. How would you find those people that fast and take over a box cutters? That really didn't make sense to me. That was very.
Oh, so you are a conspiracy theorist when it comes to 9/11.
First of all, who the hell takes over a plane with a box cutter? You got two people compared to all the passengers. You know you got men
Okay,
in
so
there too.
how many times, especially since you do security at places, how frequently do you see people that do not work there take the initiative to stop something?
Who don't work there?
Who are not employed?
They're
If
not going
they're
to.
just bystanders,
Because they're not going to because they don't want to get involved. They don't want to get hurt. However, me, as a person,
that's the same thing.
I can't. If I'm on the streets though, that's just me. I would not. If I was
It's
off
the
to work
same
hard.
thing. How isn't it? They didn't want to get involved.
If your life is on the line, what do you
How
gonna
did they know at that moment that their life was on the line? They didn't initially know what was going on.
do? We're taking over the planet.
Okay. They also had bombs, or
They said
that's
that.
what they said. They had
Had
bombs
bombs attached to them.
strapped to them or something.
Either
I
way, they were
believe
gonna go.
that.
So, you know, I would have beat the knife, take some more, excuse the language. Somebody would have got their head busted. That's just me. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna let somebody just take over the whole plane, my life, on the line, and theirs.
So
Especially
we're gonna go back.
no.
Let's go back.
Anyway, yeah,
So you're saying
that's my question.
you're always gonna initially start with the sponge approach and then you'll go to the panic for gold.
I will look. I will research things and get a good view on it. Because, you know, I'll try to get my view on it too, as well. Especially if it's something I don't know. You know, especially when you're approaching something you don't know about. you're really gonna sponge it in. But you're also gonna be like, let me see what this person
That is
thinks.
true.
And you do like for instance, like a restaurant. You do go to a restaurant, right? You get the review. If you
Read all the reviews. Yeah.
read the reviews, see their view before, see other people's opinion, and if you see mostly good, guess what you do? And if you, of course, if you see a lot of negative views,
I still go.
you know,
I'll still go.
I would.
Just to see.
I just because my way of thinking, I'm like, let me find out on my own.
Right.
You know, that's part of heavy. Would that be considered that? Sponge and go.
I think sponge is really just not questioning anything, just taking it and then that's what it is. Panic for gold is probing, asking for questions, all of that.
Let me ask you a question about this. Yeah, that's the way I look at it. You know, I think for a long time now, you know, I think it gets me in trouble too. I think it really does.
So now I'm gonna cover module 7, which was assumptions, value conflicts, and value assumptions. So first I want to talk about exactly what values are to me. Um, values are either taught or they're learned by, pop culture, the people around you. Um, those are the things that you're taught to hold dear to you, the trait, the values that, or the things that should be within the people around you, so you feel that are important. I think, like one for me is loyalty. Loyalty is a huge, huge value, and I'll get into that later. But it's what you're taught. It's what you see. It's what is influenced by your environment. So a value conflict would be the text would be the differing values that stem from different frames of reference. So like the ones that are the samples that are given in the module, loyalty versus honesty. Should you tell your parents about your sister's drug habit? Would your loyalty to your sister override the honesty that you have that you owe your parents about your sister's drug habit? As an example. Text and assumption. For the text, an assumption is an unstated belief that supports the explicit reasoning. So, as I spoke about in like module 3, and even as Patrick just spoke about as well, um, assumptions are way too easy to make and can sometimes be very detrimental. I think this course has definitely opened my mind up to not just assuming, especially making sure that I'm mindful of when I am assuming. I think everyone is always going to make assumptions. There's no way to completely keep from making any assumptions, but now I have the tools to sort of ask questions so I don't have to assume. And especially when I'm speaking to someone or reading something from someone that is unfamiliar, those assumptions can pretty much kill a relationship that may be being built, whether that's a work relationship, a friend relationship, a personal relationship. Um, assumptions can be, positive or negative. Tying those together with, again, the text from the module, it says value assumptions are very important assumptions for arguments because they are directing the reasoning behind or from behind the screen. By value assumption is meant a taken for granted belief about the relative desirability of certain competing values. So, like I was speaking about, if I'm reading someone who I'm not familiar with, or I'm talking to someone that I'm not familiar with, I think my assumptions are going to be all over the place because I don't know them. I'm not familiar with them at all. Then the value assumptions, I'm really not going to know them, especially if I don't know their background, where they're coming from. Because even with knowing that, they could still go to the opposite side of the spectrum of where you might think that they would be. So I think as a whole, this is very tricky. I feel like even with knowing someone, it still is tricky. So as a story, I actually just had this happen a couple of days ago. I have a friend who she moved here to Hawaii. She was a civilian, and we met when I was working a second job, and we clicked immediately. So we talked all the time. We hung around each other constantly. We were together, if not every weekend, or I'm sorry, every week. It would be at least every weekend. Um, it was we formed a really good bond. So while she was here, I started dating a guy here, and we were all friends though. We were all friends, and it started to come to a point where their friendship started to get a little inappropriate, and we would talk about it, and I assumed that her loyalty would be to me. So no matter what, she wouldn't do that. She wouldn't do anything, too inappropriate. So I would have to be like, hey, please, going too far, and that would be okay, right? So time progressed, and more inappropriate things are popping up, and I have to continuously speak, and then finally, there was another incident where the inappropriateness got too inappropriate, and I had to sit and like, hey, I don't. Not only is honesty a very big value that I hold, loyalty is a very big value that I hold, but I did have a value conflict in that because she told me about the inappropriate incident, and though I did value her honesty, the loyalty trumped everything for me in that moment because there's certain things should not happen when you're loyal to someone. Um, she felt like the fact that she was honest about it that should have made everything okay, and that in turn was her value assumption. She assumed that I would value her honesty over the loyalty, and so all that to say, I've known her for a little over a year now, and we were inseparable while we were together. So you would think since she knows me so well, I know her so well, these value conflicts would not come into play. We wouldn't have value assumptions because we know each other, right? No. Not only did this module explain that, and I'm so glad that I was able to read this module and get into it right before a situation like this happened because I was able to not just react once she was honest with me. I made sure she understood, hey, I really appreciate your honesty. Um, but you definitely did assume that I valued your honesty over your loyalty. And so. I think that most people don't, there's no real way to completely um, get away from value assumptions. No matter what, they're going to happen. No matter how well you know someone, no matter where you think that they stand, hey, that the assumption's always going to happen. And sometimes, as an assumptions are hidden and unstated. Um, Even though I think sometimes they're not always hidden or unstated. They may have been spoken about, and it may have just been ambiguous. Um, so I think assumptions are also things that can be moved away from once you remove the ambiguity of your conversation or whatever way you're communicating your point. Once that ambiguity is removed, I feel like there's a stronger chance that assumption would be removed as well. In that instance, I must have been very ambiguous for her to not understand why I would have assumed that she would have known that I value loyalty more than I valued her honesty. Um, in the text, it does say that assumptions are potentially deceptive, and I can't agree with that. But in a sense, I don't. I don't always feel like that. Okay, no, that's why it says potentially, but I can't really, come up with a way that really makes sense because I don't. I know that what transpired between my friend and I, that was not. She was not being deceptive. She was not doing anything that she had no malice in her intent. So that part doesn't really. Do you have anything that you can put in about the potentially deceptive pieces of an assumption?
Or deceptive. Well, like you mean like being dishonest or like just you really delve into it.
I'm sorry. Well then, I'll give the textbook definition for deceptive, which is giving an appearance or impression different from the true one. In a sentence that is, he put the question with deceptive casualness. Misleading
Yeah,
is
misleading.
another adjective for it.
Right.
So I guess that definitely getting that definition actually really clarified that for me.
Because you like some definition of trying to be neutral as possible.
Right.
And that kind of it got straight to the point.
Right.
So,
Throwing that word misleading definitely clarified that. So I'm gonna go ahead and backtrack. Assumptions are definitely potentially deceptive because I do think also that the speaker or the writer may throw in some ambiguities as was spoken about in a previous module. They throw those things in there, so they leave the reader with the opportunity, the reader or the listener with the opportunity to form their own opinion, to mislead them from, which can mislead them from where either they're trying to go or where they want for them to go. It may be just fitting their own agenda depending on what they're talking about. But another part, when have I been guilty of making an assumption? I definitely just my story. That was a full assumption that I assumed that since I had known her for such a long time that her values were in line with my values. And reading this as well as all the other modules as well, it's definitely clarified how the questions that should be asked are made completely clear when, I don't know, like say getting to know someone. There's no way to have 100% clarity, but it definitely helps to get as much clarity as possible. So I know I'm oftentimes guilty of making an assumption, but my critical thinking, that'll, that keeps me from going too far, as well as keeps me open to when I've made an assumption towards someone or something, I have the opportunity for them to clarify and not be an issue.
The question I have for you is, give a time, basically recently, where there was a value assumption in a discussion or email. You did nothing.
In a discussion or an email. So I'll go with an email then, because I have the way that my job is set up right now. The people that I work directly for, I'm not around. I work in an office with myself and a different officer that has nothing to do with my job, and that's it. So for the most part, when I'm speaking to my supervisors, they just send emails like, "Hey, Lauren, these are the things that you'll have to be doing for today. These are the hot ticket items that I need." And sometimes they'll spell it out like this. I need this first. This had these, just like that, have to be done now. I need these by noon. I need these by close of business. These can wait until the end of the week. Things like that. But when that doesn't happen, um, I just make my assumption on what I think is important to get done as soon as possible. Sometimes that assumption is made just because I don't feel like doing it right now, so I'll do it later unless it's asked of me. So that kind of ties back into the deceptive assumption. Um, but oftentimes that is an assumption of mine, so that when I usually will go and check back in with my supervisors around noon, right before lunch or right after lunch or something. Like, okay, hey, these are the things that I completed. Did you need for me to do this? Like, when did you need for me to do this? But those skills I didn't really gain until, after reading Module 7. I would just, make the assumption that I'll complete these items and give those to my supervisors. And then when the end of the day comes, they're like, hey, Warren, I needed these things. And that assumption pretty much just put me in a place where I looked like I wasn't doing my job well, or I wasn't paying attention. Those are the questions that came up in Module 7, and the thinking that it invoked in me definitely helps me to get further away from making those assumptions, and what I need to do to make sure that the people that are speaking to me, they don't put me in a place where I have to make assumptions, and I don't put them in a place where they have to make assumptions. So that's my conclusion on Module 7.
I did Module 6. I took Module 6 on ambiguity. Um, we live in a society where our Constitution is very ambiguous. And one of the things in Module 6 that really caught my attention was the one about the relationship between ambiguity and Notre Dame language. And the first sentence that came in there was ambiguity is not always an accident. Sometimes it's put out there to let the reader, the listener, interpret it their own way. And that's what that amazes me with this, with how we live. Because one thing he pointed out was like politics and our Constitution talk. One thing I like to really give people on is freedom of religion. And to me it's not an ambiguous statement. So, but people interpret
cut
it,
and dry.
and it's cut and dry, but yet it's still not. It seems ambiguous to everybody else, and because we have a president who went against, totally against it by banning somebody to come over here. Religion. And he banned Muslims. He was very specific. And he didn't just say radical ones. He was just saying Muslims. Okay.
Even if you were, I don't know if that's the right term, a conservative Muslim, like.
Yeah, and you know what, and the way I interpret that, it made me think about how when the Pilgrims came, and everybody that came over from Europe, they came over for religious reasons because it was different. Christians, you had Christians, you had Quakers, you had Protestants, you had a whole bunch of other religions. But they just list a few in your history books because they tell you in your history books when you read them which religions came over there. They focused on those. They never mention like, oh, there are Muslims who came over here, which we know for a fact, all for pretty much that's Muslims. Muslims are here. Everybody's been here coming here for a long time, and all these years we may have had all these issues with we never had really many issues with people bombing. It's always been domestic terrorism. People who are actually citizens of our country really out this terrorism, but nobody wants to pay attention to that either.
Right.
But
we want the people who aren't doing it, not paying attention to those of us that are.
and that's that with politicians. That's why when I listen to it, I try to listen to talk radio and about politics, especially on the right side. Because every time I listen to them, I just laugh And because they just look at things totally different, and it's like they don't value what the Constitution said. I mean, and that's one thing with politics, that where people, they let people pick their own view, and it tells you something about people too, and you sometimes wonder if you can. To me, I know, me personally, I always wonder if we can ever live in harmony with the way people think,
Absolutely.
and it's impossible. It's impossible because
The term living, or the phrase living in harmony itself is ambiguous.
mm,
What is living
people,
in harmony to you?
to me, I would say, okay, like you're religious, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have your certain religion, you believe in,
Mm-hmm.
but you have a Muslim who's maybe different than yours.
Mm-hmm.
And for my views and how Christians destroy Muslims, it's like, yo, really? And y'all worship the same? It just has a different name.
I don't agree. It's different, but it's different. I think, to my knowledge, Muslims do not. They see Jesus as a prophet. He's not a prophet in Baptist Christianity. I would say. In different sectors of Christianity, they believe the same thing. The way that I was taught, Jesus is not a prophet. But that's not here nor there.
Yeah, and that's what people, uh, and that's why I guess they never get along. But it points back to where everything, like what our politicians come to us to tell us about, maybe like like oh, I'll give you a good example, like when they cut taxes somewhere, like say for teachers, for education, they cut education taxes, right? And you uh, education, when they say they're making cutting budgets up for education, they don't tell you exactly whose budget they're cutting. We're cutting the public school.
They maintain
They're
that
cutting the taxes for
ambiguity.
public schools and lowering taxes for private schools. You don't know what they're doing. They're just telling you a basic thing. We're cutting education taxes, or we're cutting taxes, cutting their budget, education. You don't be specific. Because it's funny because I read something saying that he was going to cut education, but they're going to cut public and focus more on private, give more money to private schools.
That doesn't make sense,
though. And I thought about it. I was like, why would they do that? But I thought about it.
It lines the pockets of the people who are doing
it. But that too. But a lot of the bigger, who runs big companies, who run huge companies, their kids are in private schools, and they're going to pass that business down. So what would you do?
Set your kids up to continue.
And plus Trump has kids probably is in college. He's got kids about to go. He's in private school now. He got younger kids. He's 7 years old. But he has kids in private school that's going to have to run his business, right? So that's why he's trying to make it easier for them. And I see that. But I also focus on, well, what, you're cutting these people over here off. You're cutting your future workers too.
But that's why they maintain the ambiguity, because you can't say that and back it up.
But
you have no facts to back that up.
What? Which one?
Any of it. You cannot back up that Trump is doing what he's doing to help to make sure his kids are good. What he leaves all of his statements ambiguous.
Yeah.
That's your interpretation, but you can't prove it.
But when you research it more, and that's why you have to panic. When that panic comes in, hold on, man. Why are you doing it? That's my idea. I'm like, in order for you to convince me why you're doing it, and convince me, okay, I do agree with you why you're cutting their hair and making more there. That's when you have to draw your conclusion to agree or disagree. That one right there really opened my mind up to a lot of things, like policies that he has and a lot of things. Because guess when I'm getting older, I have children coming up, and you want to know these things. You know what I'm saying? So you have big plans for your kids, but you want to help them get to where they want to be. So you want to make sure that road there is clear.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And it's going to be some struggles, but at the same time, you just want to make sure they're get where they want to get, and that's why, for you, for me personally, it would be perfect for me. It just made me realize to really start researching what these people say in their deeds, what they're going to do, and how it's going to affect me, and how I'm going to do for my children.
Okay. So now my question for Module 6 for you is, how do you separate ambiguity and vagueness in your everyday combos? I want to go ahead and just give you the textbook definitions real quick. So ambiguity, the quality of being open to more than one interpretation, inexactness, and vagueness, the lack of certainty or distinctness. So how do you separate ambiguity and vagueness in your everyday combos?
You ever hear this statement, do what you want?
Absolutely.
That's
I
the
say
most
it quite often.
biggest ambiguous statement on this I've ever heard. Do what you want. But we don't know the consequences of that statement. We don't know what you think. And that's, to me, that's vague too. It's kind of vague. Do what you want. What you mean by do what I want?
Right. In what way?
In what way?
Yeah.
Which way is going to be worse for me? That's where you have to make a person open that up a little bit more.
So you just question.
I question. Automatic. That's an automatic what? I just, that's just what I think. I just want to, because I want to make sure that we're on the same page. That way, that's one thing. I don't want to be like, 'cause I know me. If you just say do what you want, I'm going to do exactly what I want, and you may not like it, which is going to be 9 times out of 10, because you're not going to like what I'm going to do. And that's why I try to avoid it. Like, what do you mean by that? Now, if I do this, you're going to be mad. Or if I do this, it's going to make you happy. But what's it going to do for me? But you know what I'm saying? So that's why, it's important to actually make that get on
Alrighty. And this concludes our video.